Initials. The pager is a cheap rectangle that feels like a motel remote, light in the hand but heavier after midnight. I set it on the nightstand upside down so the flash won't find me first. The phone goes face down beside it. There's a habit to all that, same as the glass of water with the grocery store logo on it, and the aspirin I talk myself into not taking. My apartment hums under all that with the same refrigerated buzz as the cases at Brooks Market, 3 blocks over. You'd think you stop hearing it, you don't. It trades places with other sounds, climbs on top of them, and takes a while to climb back down. If you stand at my bedroom window at the right hour, you can see the lot behind the old furniture store where a guy named Clancy runs an indoor flea on Saturdays. On weeknights, it's all emptiness, cartwheels catching shadows, a dog sometimes trotting through like it owns it. A vapor light over the alley keeps resetting itself, cooling and warming with a click like a tiny frog. I tell myself I live here because it is a straight shot to the highway and from there to the office park, not because the rent is good and I don't like to move my things. The company has a name that could mean anything. That's fine by me. Names that tell you too much make you responsible for more than you asked. We keep other people's transactions from falling on the floor. That is how I explain it to my aunt when she asks at Thanksgiving what it is I do. She nods like she understands and then goes on about her neighbor's grandson. In the office, we call it settlement and reconciliation. Big words that sound like they mean forgiveness and weddings, but here only mean we balance columns. We don't have clients in the sense you used to. We have integrations with places you've never heard of that are the ones underneath other places you have. I keep a tail on prod even in bed. That's not company policy, it's habit. When you've pulled one too many overnight rollbacks, you don't trust silence. I use a little script I wrote to color the different levels. Errors a fat square, warnings thin, infos a slim line of gray. Near midnight, a new field starts blooming at the end of each stack trace, an M dash and 2 letters. Not user initials, not a service, just JR. The first time it looks like noise that a filter will learn to ignore. The second time, it looks like the thing that will be tomorrow's problem. The third time, and it gets under the skin. The schema doesn't have that column. The payload shouldn't carry it. The marshaller we use wouldn't allow extra fields even if they were there. I write a note to myself in the little dot grid notebook that rides in my pocket. -JR, audit shipper, transform, destination. I don't love exclamation points, but I put one and then scratch it into a regular line because I don't like to be a person with exclamation points on paper. I hunt anyway. Grep the repo, scan the shipper, crack containers, and inspect layers like I'm looking for a note someone left in fiberglass. Nothing writes the suffix. The vendor says the payload already has it. We don't accept that at face value, so I open wire captures and let my eyes slide over packets like a man running his hand down lumber to find where the splinters start. The stream logs plain text and those 2 letters clean as a signature. My partner is 6 weeks. We haven't told anyone. She is still learning her body in this new register. I am learning where not to look when someone else on the train is scrolling photos of their kids because my eyes go there like a climb. We haven't chosen names. When she floats Julia, the logs keep their little JR. Rowan, they stay. June, still JR. She laughs at me because I tell her about it like it's a thing we might have to solve together, even though it's probably nothing and oddities are how you earn your money in this job. I try to trick it, I think, Avery, until my temples throb, and I make an appointment with myself to get better at letting thoughts pass. The initials do not budge. I can live with that. I can live with almost anything if it sits quiet. It doesn't. The tail starts to find a rhythm. It shows the suffix at every level, not just error, which means nothing and means everything, because we're taught to make offenses into categories. Once a first week, you learn which ones to ignore in your bones, even if your training says not to. This field belongs to no one, and it belongs to every line that wants to be noticed. If I were different, I'd call that fate. I don't like words like that. I stand up from my desk to make the kind of coffee you make when you don to want to think about craft. Scoop until it looks right, water until it threatens to come over the lip. The break room has a fridge that hums a little higher than mine and makes ice on a schedule that ignores people. The fluorescents flicker in a way the landlord promises is within spec. The vending machine rumbles like it's hungry. You tell yourself that noise means the compressor is healthy. You tell yourself a lot of things. I take a paper cup because I like to throw it away when I'm done. There is a comfort to end points in the day. At 1:47, the errors pause for one breath and an info line arrives. I donna to write, heartbeat acknowledged, JR. The time is always 1:47 when it changes like that. That number becomes a pebble in the shoe. It's not a number with myth on it. It's not a church time. It feels honest and worse for it. I kill alerting and sleep badly. At stand-up, nobody else saw it. The way stand-up rooms sound when compiled minds reach for something to say. Shoes squeaking on low carpet, the thermostat clicking down, someone off-screen unwrapping the muffin they meant not to buy. Looks clean, says Sammy from Austin. We saw a blip around one, but it was nothing, says Gord. I don't ask follow-ups because I don't want to be the guy with ghosts in his logs. Ultrasound day. The room goes dim like a movie showing without a plot yet. The gel looks colder than it is. My partner squeezes my hand like she's trying to make all the blood be good, then lets go because she hates performative gestures. On the screen, something turns and returns the probe, patient and steady. I flinch when I realize it's not a face. It's a crown, and then a shoulder, and then I make a face at myself. The tech is one of those women who is good at talking slow without making you feel like a fool. She says, measure here to herself, and then later to us says, everything looks like everything should look. The printer chatters grey rain. I fold the picture the way you fold something thin you don't want to crack. On the drive back, my partner says, I thought I'd cry, and laughs without laughing. I reach for the radio and turn it down from a news voice about a lane closure, and we both let quiet fill the car. Back at my desk, the tail breathes one line, not error, not info, a level I've never seen. Born. After it, a full name blooms where initials were, June Rowan. The order we hadn't agreed on. The stream goes quiet, then resumes, sober, signing nothing. The page on my desk sees my hand go to write and then not write. I put a small dot in the corner and close the book as if that will keep the dot from reproducing. I imagine walking to HR and asking what the policy is for software that names your child for you. I imagine what face the woman there would make before she tells me to open a ticket. At home, we try the other order because that's the kind of people we are trying to be. Not superstitious, but patient with each other's hang-ups. The pulse on the monitor answers to June when the doctor later says the name, which is not a thing that should be true and isn't not really. It is a tiny jump that could be anything. But there are days when you let your brain be a little primitive so you can believe you live in a world where things line up. Nightly at 1:47, a single blank line appears, as if saving room for a name that already found us. You start to see patterns everywhere when you're living with a ticker tape. The receipts from the grocery start to carry a broken dash that looks like a hyphen that lost courage. The microwave won't start on the first push. The elevator at the office lingers between 3 and 4, like it needs a second to think how many floors make a life. If you were to show me a list of those things in someone else's hand, I would say they were tired and needed to stretch more and get outside when the sun is still doing its thing. In my hand, they look like a case study. The building has got a whole wall of glass that the owners must have thought was a good idea when they pitched this place to companies. In summer, that wall makes afternoon heat get personal. In winter, you live with a draft that smells like metal warmed up. My desk isn't near the glass, but enough light hits the top that I change the angle of my monitor now and then in a small bargain with glare. The HVAC gives us its fog when the humidity thinks it owns the day. The vents take turns being the one that rattles, and the screws make a sound when you tap them like an instrument that wants you to learn it. My manager is a man named Lyle, who used to work in a big city and moved here because his wife's parents are the kind that look at you at Christmas until you take the hint. He is fine at his job and is fond of saying, "Let us not get ahead of ourselves" twice in a row when he thinks a person is getting ahead of themselves. He doesn't watch logs the way I do. Nobody should. He watches the overview page with the pretty gauges that reassure investors. If I put born in front of him, he'd say interval or bug or keyboard cat. You get to a point where the word bug bothers you. They aren't bugs. They're the only proof we have that the machine still speaks at all. At the coffee shop downstairs, a place with a clean sign and a chalkboard that carries a pun each day, whether the barista is in the mood for puns or not. The line moves like a tide you can predict, except when someone wants to talk about notes like that matters, when what you need is just enough caffeine to keep you steady with your own hands. The mugs there pay attention to themselves, heavy ceramic with a lip that your mouth can trust. I take mine to the table near the window and write the time I shouldn't to write, 1:47. I don't need to write it. I could cut the page and hold it up to the light and see it through. I write it anyway. The amount of sleep you think you need and the amount of sleep you can live on do an argument in you that no one hears. You start to bargain with yourself. If you lie down by 10, you can watch the tail until the time you don't want to say, then turn all screens upside down and make a promise. If you lie down by midnight, you can sleep through it and pretend nothing happened, and if something did, it doesn't need you to witness it to be real. If you lie down too late, you don't lie down. The walls get the color they have at 4 in the morning that you done at sea during day hours are gray with green in it like the river, when the paper plant was still making steam above it. We get an email from the building a week into the JR thing, one of those that opens with "out of an abundance." And you know you're about to be told to alter your habits. The water is fine, they say, but maintenance found sediment in a line, and the fountain in the lobby is off until further notice. You'd think that would only matter to kids or to old men who like to sit downstairs and read a paper that still shows up in a plastic sleeve on porches. It matters to anyone who forgets to bring a bottle. The ice machine on our floor goes first. Button lights blinking, thermometer on the side turning into a number you can't trust. The coffee tastes like a basement until someone buys a few gallons of filtered and sets them on the counter with a note that says, "Chips in the jar, please." The note curls up at the corner before lunch, and I tape it down. At night, the printer in my apartment, which I use almost never and only for forms, I end up filling out by hand anyway, wakes itself and runs its head to one side and back again and does its polite little whir. The first night it does this, I get out of bed and stand there with my hand on the top of it and feel the heat coming from the strip of plastic that covers the brain. I don't unplug it. I tell myself I should unplug it, and I don't. The word habit comes up again, where it doesn't belong. In the mornings, there's a man who stands by the mailbox, clusters out front, and tears the coupons out of circulars, like he's making a quilt. He never looks at me when I leave. I never look at his hands. I've started to keep my head down on the stairs because the picture of that printed name will come to fill me up if I let it. The paper is nothing. The ink is nothing. The word sits on it like an insect that knows you won't swat it. June Rowan. The more I think it, the less it means, like when you say a word too many times and it gasps its meaning out and dies in your mouth. Then I think of a different word, born, and that one takes a long breath and sits down. I try to be a man who cooks. It is part of the deal I made with myself when my partner moved in. Take your hour at dinner and make heat. Don't buy boxes and call it work. I chop with a knife that keeps a decent edge. I boil, I salt, I taste. On Wednesday, the glass lid on the pot fogs in a circle that doesn't match the steam. The ring looks like a mark left by someone's thumb from the center out, a swirl like you see on the edges of a mirror when the silver has gone. I tell myself it's the pattern from however it was made. I switch lids. The ring shows up on that one too. I lift the pot and my wrist pops where I broke it in 8th grade, falling off the low fence between the school dumpsters. "You okay?" she says. "Fine," I say into the steam, and blow and let the steam burn my face. At work, near the glass wall, the building across the way has the kind of cladding that insects love. There's a stripe at the top where the LEDs go behind the panels and make it look like it believes it has a skyline. If you stand in our conference room and squint through the middle of a meeting and pretend to look at your notes, you can watch the top light roll once an hour to prove it's not stuck. The HVAC coughs, and a man from another team, Sammy, not our Sammy, says, "Hey, weird question," in the way people do when they know there is no such thing in this setting as a weird question. "You seeing anything odd in recon on your side?" he asks. I look at his hands and see that one thumbnail has a half moon of black under it, like he shut it in something, like doors are what they used to be when they made a sound closing. "Odd how?" I say, and try to make it sound like an invitation and not like a dare. "I saw a field yesterday that..." He stops because he doesn't want to say 2 letters out loud and make them a thing we all now can point to. "It's patched," I lie. He nods, like he's relieved. We both look out the window where a small truck with no logo backs up and beeps a polite monotone. Sound sits in the room like a dog that knows when it's supposed to lie down. The union guys, who share the lot with us, re-striped parking, and our side now feeds onto theirs by a little cheat at the edge of the chain link. On Thursday, a man in a yellow vest closes that cheat with a temporary sawhorse and a note that says, "Use main drive." It's not that big of a change. It adds a minute to start and end of day. You'd think it would make us better. We grumble like men do when someone narrows their choices for good reasons. I add the minute and forget it until I don't. I take to leaving the apartment at the same minute each morning. I don't do this on purpose. I notice it after a week. I start to watch the minute march across devices the way a person watches a neighbor leave each day to make sure he is who he says he is. The stove clock is 8 minutes wrong because I set it wrong on a day I meant to fix it, and then decided to live with it as a character flaw. The microwave clock is right. The phone is right because it has no choice. I put my shoes on when the seconds in my head and the microwave S8 both feel like they're remaking a braid. "Where are my keys?" I say, even when I am looking at them, because that is the kind of sentence my mouth expects of me. The keys hide in the pocket of yesterday's jacket. I fish and breathe and try not to say the name the log said. We get a compliance email one night that says we will be conducting a multi-tenant failover test on Sunday morning between 7 and 10. There will be brief user impact, which is the way we say a person will stand in a grocery line and think the machine has misplaced them for almost a minute and then pray to no one when the light goes green. Please ensure all non-essential processes are paused, it says. We sign up for work that asks you to call anything non-essential and say it without choking. I start a checklist in my notebook and put a square next to each item and draw little diagonals through the squares when they redone so they look like kites. It's an old habit from a job where paper moved between hands and got stamps. On Friday, Lyle calls me into a small room that used to be a phone closet and now has a chair and a table and a screen that does nothing. The wall smells like old plans. He closes the door like he's about to tell me we're starting over. "You're seeing it too," he says, not asking. I look at him and see that he is tired in the way management gets tired. A thinness at the corners of the mouth, like they've been holding in a laugh for a long time and forgot how to let it go. I want to like him because it makes life simpler when the person who tells you where to point calls you by your name. Seeing what? I say, because some parts of this are performance and because I want to know how he will say it. Ghost field, he says, and I want to laugh and I do not. JR, he says, it's not in the spec. No, I say. It broke through to a partner's overview, he says. They sent a screenshot like they'd caught a moth. Compliance wants a root cause, but we don't. We can't. He rubs his eye like he is erasing something. Can you keep an eye on it? He asks, which is the same as asking me to keep both eyes on it. Don't stir it, he adds, and I imagine stirring a line of text like soup. I keep both eyes on it. The tail sits on my screen, and I tune out the rest until I forget to pretend I am doing anything else. The phones on the floor ring in waves. The copier burps warm paper. The ice in the ice bucket melts slow and gives me its hollow clack when someone drops a scoop. At 1:47, the pause comes, and an info that isn't T1 stretches the width of the terminal window like it owns the room. Heartbeat acknowledged. JR. It writes its letters in a way that makes you feel like they were there before you looked. Nobody else on the floor notices that anything has happened because nothing has, not in a way their bodies can register. The apartment gets smaller. That's a thing that happens when you put a future in it. The closets are what they are. The drawers don't know how to multiply to meet your thoughts. I take the box of cables I keep, just in case, and push it farther back under the bed than it usually sits. And when I do, my hand finds a candy wrapper and a washer and a coin that is not from any year that mattered to me. My partner buys a second laundry basket, and the way it completes the shape of the room makes me feel like we've made some sort of promise to the building. We talk to the landlady about the lease like adults do, and she nods like a bird being agreeable and says things like, market rate, that I pretend to understand. Upstairs, a boy runs from one end of his life to the other while brushing his teeth. He leaves his toothbrush on when he walks, and the little electric whine lowers when he goes around the corner. The failover happens on Sunday, and feels like when you bite your cheek in the same spot you bit it last week. A moment of anger at yourself for being the kind of flesh that repeats its mistakes. We stop what we can stop. We slow what we can slow. A switch thinks about its existence for a beat longer than the book says it should. We all stare at the spot where we know the load will show itself, as if looking will make it happen sooner. When the users come back, they come in a way that makes you think of a field lifting its head after rain. Good job, team, Lyle slacks, and then says it out loud because he is learning that there are days when typed praise goes right through you and makes no sound. That night, I dream a dream without cleverness. It's barely a dream. It's a server room that has been cleaned too recently and smells like ammonia faint and the unique scent of metal that has thought about melting and decided to hold. Rose, a cool that might as well be sound. The hum is too steady. It's like a machine made a knockoff of itself to prove it could. I walk down an aisle and a light at the end has a color that doesn't exist in this spectrum. It's not science. It is a way of saying you do not have a slot for the feeling it puts in your body. I wake at the time I do not say and watch the numbers on the microwave climb themselves and confess to nothing. I start to avoid reflective things. The glass at the office has smears on it from hands that dragged themselves along when the elevator needed a second. I don't clean them, even though it is in me to clean them. The microwave door gives me half my face when I wait for the leftovers to be less cold than when I started. The stainless steel kettle tells me what I look like when I think the name I am not supposed to say out loud. If I go to the bathroom in the dark, I keep my head down. My partner laughs at herself in the mirror and then looks at me like she wants me to laugh with her, and I try and it doesn't get to the eyes. Work sets up monitors in the conference room while someone's relative comes in and talks about resilience patterns and chaos readiness. The kinds of phrases that feel like the real thing until you set them down on your table at home and look at them under good light. The man wears a blue shirt without texture and a tie that has the idea of flowers on it. He uses a remote that shouldn't work from that distance and works anyway. He says, "The system will tell you what it wants to do if you stop trying to make it into what you think it is." And 4 people nod like he wrote that on a whiteboard once and left it there forever. I write it in my dot grid and tell myself I'm above that sort of thing. I am not. We make it to 20 weeks. The tech says numbers and measures new bones. The printer lays the grey rain in a fresh sheet. The nurse says, "Do you want to know?" And we both look at each other like we're reholding glass and being told not to move. "No!" my partner says, and when we get to the car, she says yes. And when we get home, she says, "Let's just be where we are," and sets the picture on the shelf between the plant we keep forgetting and the mug I use when the regular mug is in the sink. I put the photo in a clear sleeve, even though that makes it feel like a stamp. Names keep being a game we play and pretend it's not a game. She says June, and the hairs on my arms stand because that was in the logs, and she doesn't know yet, not the way you know when you watch something write a sentence you didn't tell it to. She says Rowan, and I say I like the tree, and she says me too, and then we don't have to decide now. I nod like a sensible man. Later at the sink, the water runs with a metallic taste the building manager would tell me is within spec, and I let it run until I think I've outrun the taste. The sink makes a knock in the pipes when I shut it off, the exact kind of knock that has meant winter to me since childhood. The logs stop carrying the initials for 3 days. I'm not calm. If they had continued, I would have found a way to live with them. If they had stopped and never returned, I would have put it in the part of me that puts things where you keep stories about how the world behaves until life asks you to test them. 3 days is the amount of time your heart knows before your head admits it knows. Nothing else changes. The heartbeat line comes like it always does, never as a line on my screen, only as a careful thought when the nurse presses with the probe and the room goes that special dark. I tell myself I'm a man who doesn't need a machine to say his name back to him under the skin, and the machine gives me my shake like a dog after a bath. On the 4th night, the suffix returns and sits at the end of every line as if it had simply been out in the parking lot, making a call, and came back to tell us it didn't go through. I close my eyes and picture the rack in the 2nd floor closet where the terminal servers hum, where the cable retains the coil of whoever spun it the day it was installed. I picture the way a machine knows its own name and won't let you change it. The entries are clean. The punctuation is a kind of pride. If I were a machine, I'd be proud of that too. We get a storm the next week that takes the power down on half the block and leaves ours stuttering. The building puts a notice up in the lobby about elevator outages in a font that means we learned our lesson. I take the stairs because I like to know what the stairwell smells like. It is always a mix of paint, old lemon cleaner, and shoes. The 3rd landing has a note scratched in the paint where the handrail ends, a heart, and 2 initials that are not mine and not the machine. S and I step over them, like that makes me righteous. The exit door sticks because heat swells it. And when I push it open into the alley, the smell of garbage that has survived rain rises like truth. I stand there and watch a man across the lot fight a plastic bag that wants to be taller than he is. My phone buzzes against my thigh. My hand goes to it like it remembers a child's head. It's my partner. Her voice is small at first because she's calling me from behind a door. Then it's our house and the dishwasher hiss makes itself known. "I felt," she says, and doesn't finish because she doesn't want to say a word she might have to take back. I say nothing because my mouth is full of metal air. It's probably just, it says it can happen, it's normal, she says. I go down the stairs 2 at a time, and the stairwell air tastes like a battery. I don't run a red. I stop at the yellow and feel like I deserve the time the red will take from me. The microwave clock agrees with me for once, or I agree with it, and that feels like a warning. At home, she stands in the kitchen with her hand on the counter like she's holding the building up. We have a system about our eyes now. We don't ask too much of them. I say, "Do you want to call?" And she says, "No." And then, after a breath, "Yes." I dial, and the voice on the other end is young and cheerful, which makes me feel safe until it doesn't. "It's normal," she says. "Many people feel that way." We nod like she can see us. It becomes private again as soon as you end the call. She sits on the couch with the pillow under her legs and the TV loud and her smile at an angle that makes it look like we are not being watched by anything. The field at the end of the lines fills in completely that night. Not just the initials. It writes a sentence that isn't in our verbs. It says, "Still." It isn't a level I can categorize. The whole line is a level. I clip the window and put it in a file, and then wonder what I think I'll do with that. I lie down with the pager face down and think about how much of my job is watching the symptoms of something I may not be able to fix and inventing language to make that seem noble. The building ice machine groans again through the wall and gives up and starts its cycle again. And the second time, it sounds like a person telling you something they didn't but mean to tell you. The next day, we get an honest advisory. The company sends it, not the building. "We are investigating intermittent anomalies in the logging layer," it says. "At this time, there is no evidence of data exfiltration or compromise. We will issue an update within 48 hours. Lawyers touched it at least 3 times. I can feel their heat on the words. People in other departments stop me in the hall. "Ghost field," they say, half smile like kids at a haunted house in daylight. I say, "We're looking," and hold my hands out to show they're empty, so they want to ask me to hold anything else. My partner asked me at dinner if I think computers can want things. She asks this like we re-talking about movies and not something down the street that has our names in it. "No," I say, and then, "Not in that way." And then, "I think they do what we ask, and what we don't know we asked." And she says, "So they want what we ask them to want." And I say something like that, and then, "I don't know," because that is the sentence that saves you when you stop pretending to be the man who knows. She takes my plate without looking and puts it in the sink, and the water runs, and I let it until it knocks, and then turn it off. After 48 hours, the update says nothing new. Lyle has a meeting with the words "cross-functional" in the title and comes out with different hair. He looks at me and looks away and then looks back like I am the top of a lake you want to check for thin ice. "We need to quiet channels," he says. "If this propagates to client dashboards, we'll spend a week apologizing for a thing we can say the name of." He means JR and born and still. And also, he means whatever future word it might try on next. The light over his desk buzzes, and the bulb is the new kind that shouldn't buzz and buzzes anyway. He clicks his pen open and closed. The click joins the buzz. I wish I could mute the day. Night stops being a place where I can pretend to not be me. The numbers come, and I stay awake for them, because if I miss them, they still will be there. And then I'll have to meet them in my head. And that way lies the kind of math that keeps a man in the car in the morning, hand on the wheel, radio off, lungs thinking about how to reorder themselves. I watch the terminal, and the white letters on black begin to live in the back of my eyes. I close my eyes, and they keep writing. My head doesn't have the right screen for it, not one I can adjust the settings on. And the letters take on a grit, a glow, like dust on glass. I tell myself to stop. If I tell you I stop, I'd be lying. You don't stop touching a loose tooth. Your tongue goes back to it while you count the lights on the ceiling and tell yourself something about self-control. I make bargains. I won't run tail at home, only at work. I want to glance at the lines when I am in the coffee shop with the heavy cups. I won't bring the laptop to bed. I bring the laptop to the couch, which is how a person cheats with himself and gets away with it. The couch smells like stale detergent and the dust that comes in when I forget to close the window all the way. The keys warm under my hands and make that slight squeak that happens when a keycap is older than the one next to it. It writes a new one on a Friday. I will think about later when the office is smaller than it has ever been. I'm alone on the floor. I'm not supposed to be. The union side had a walkout because of something with ours, and everyone left early like you do when other people make a break. In the day you can slip through. The lights go into half mode and everything takes on that green-gray again. The terminal says ready, it doesn't sign it, it doesn't need to. The room gets colder, or I do. I stand up and my chair makes a little sound like it's tired of my weight. Ready means a lot of things. Ready means the plan you think you made is about to meet the plan, another thing made. Ready is a knife that sets itself on the table and does not say a word about what you want sliced. I shut the laptop. The slap of it makes a puff of air that moves a paper on the desk to the left. I pick up the paper and it the building flyer about hydrants, testing, temporary flow reduction, in a font that someone picked because they liked how the M looks like mountains. The hydrant men were out all week, bleeding off from corners, making puddles we will drive through later and make their fun with our tires. Water never looks like water when it's where it should not be. I can smell the iron in it through the glass if I let myself. I tell my partner about ready, and she listens until she doesn't tea because the body asks her to go lie down for an hour and make a small animal out of herself. I sit at the kitchen table with the pattern of fake wood that repeats every 10 inches and think about what it is to be the kind of person who believes a sentence on a screen carries a weight that can put a dent in a day. I tell myself it's only me making that weight. I tell myself it's only code. If you had it in you to believe that, you wouldn't have taken this job. We do not have a baby shower. We are not those people. She says she hates games. I say there will be time for all of that in ways that are not that. My mother mails a box anyway with things folded so small you think you could swallow them. When I open it, a smell that is not our house's comes out and fills the table area. It is something like her soap and something like the cedar in her closet and the ghost of the dog we buried when I was 16. I fold the things again because I like the possession of it and put the box under the table because I dot to have a better place than that. And the idea of finding a better place makes me feel like I would be calling to something to come quicker. Ready, the log said. They do not say it again. They go back to their work and ask me to go back to mine, and I find that I can I imagine a scenario where I open a trouble ticket that says log stream exhibiting human language, and in the description I put again. I imagine the field techs opening that and making faces and thinking about who I am and what kind of man I might be at home. The stream makes its noises. The heart on the screen at the doctor makes its own. They do not speak to each other. That is the lie I repeat until it doesn't matter whether it's a lie. We get a recall notice in the mail for the car. The letter is crisp and insists on smoothness, even after it has been folded to fit the envelope. It says that under rare circumstances, the seatbelt may experience unexpected release. This is the kind of language that could describe anything that matters. I drive to the dealership in the next town over because ours is booked for 2 weeks with the same letter, and I sit in their waiting room watching a TV that is trying to tell a story over the top of itself about sunscreen. The chair is a rubber that wants to be leather and makes my skin buzz. When they give me the keys back, the man says, "You're all set," like all is something he could know. As I drive out, the car's display flips to a service screen I didn't ask for and says, "System check complete," and underneath it in a font that doesn't belong to this make or this year, I feel like I see ready. It's not there. The dash is clean. My hand sweats on the wheel. My partner wakes one night and says, I had a dream. And doesn't it say anything else? Because you can paint a dream well enough to make it land in another person's yard. I say, do you want water? And she says, no. And I get it anyway because water saves people from nothing, and it is what we bring to them. The clock says a number I don't say. The tail sits dark on the screen of the laptop because I turned the screen off and the machine dozed and I didn't wake it. I put my hand on her hair and feel where it's damp and tell myself that's fine, that's fine, that's fine. Morning comes with 3 messages from 3 different time zones that all say any update. And it is a good thing those messages have to cross wires to get to my hand, because if someone had asked me that with their mouth, I'd have put a hand out and moved their question to one side. I write, monitoring, no client impact to report, and send it as if it were true, and hope that if I believe it, the world will do me the favor. I stand at the sink and wash one fork like that. It's my whole job, and the water makes a pattern on the stainless in the shape of a comma before it falls. We get closer. That's what happens in any story. The room shortens. The numbers on the calendar crowd each other until they have to begin to share a square. Hurt tries out places in the day like picking seats at a show. We have a plan and 4 backups because this town runs on everyone telling each other what to do if, and then if the if becomes a when. The bag by the door becomes a fixture that we stop seeing until we want to be the kind of people who notice fixtures. And then we touch the bag when we walk by like it needs to be fed. On a Tuesday, the company puts out a note that says we will be performing an emergency audit of our logging infrastructure between midnight and 4. Expect intermittent delays in non-critical instruments, it says. This is our way of admitting we are going to unscrew something and screw it back in until it likes its threads. You don't have to be on, Lyle tells me, which is how you tell someone that they have to be on and make them grateful there is a world where you might have said worse. I say nothing like a person who knows how to take a small trap and put a cloth over it and pick it up and carry it outside gently. I go to bed early, which means I lie there longer. The building makes its night noise, the hot water recharging, a neighbor muttering on the phone, the elevator deciding to rest a foot higher than it usually rests, and then correcting itself with a sigh. When I sleep, I dream the long aisle again, this time with a door at the end that I know leads nowhere but needs me to open it to find the nowhere formally, so it can be filed. I wake at the time I don't say, and the apartment air is warm from the heat off our 2 bodies, and the fridge has just kicked, and the sound of it starting makes me think of an engine of an era older than mine. I go to the couch. I open the machine. We start the audit. That's a funny sentence. Starting an audit feels like saying you start weather. You open your hands and let the machine tell you every place it hurts. You listen and make notes and try not to make faces because faces scare people. The lines pour like a cheap waterfall. They splash where they want. JR sits obliging and then not. Some lines carry it, some don't. Someone else watching would say that you've done what you planned. You've made the noise bigger so you can find the signal in it. We tell ourselves that, and for 10 minutes I believe it and then I don't. At 1:47, the whole stream goes white. Not blank, white like it put a sheet of paper over what it was going to tell me and let light through. A single line writes itself with the care of a scribe copying a sentence he knows he will have to copy again. It says, wait. I wait. I am not a man who is good at this, but I find it in me to stare at a screen without moving for a length of time that makes my eyes try to water and then change their minds. The next line unrolls like a tape measure in the hands of someone who knows what he is doing. It says, come. That's not the word you want. It's not a direction as much as an admission that the direction is not yours. The phone makes a sound. I don't know how to describe what happens to a sound at 2 in the morning in a room where you've been listening for a different kind of sound. It tears a thin left-behind layer off the air. I answer before the second ring because the second ring makes me feel like a person between states. It's time, she says, like in a movie, but not like that, because in a movie the woman's voice is loud, and this one is smaller, precise, the way a voice gets when it has a hand on the edge of a table. I say, okay, and we both move like a drill we practiced once with laughter, and now without it. The elevator is stuck. It has decided the third floor is where a life makes decisions. The light is on in the little panel that says, "In service," and that is a lie. The building put a note up after the storm, and no one took it down. We take the stairs. They smell like shoes and lemon and the metallic breath of the city that comes up through the tile cracks. Outside, the vapor light does its click-swell-click like it is doing 16 hours a day. The car feels colder than the air because that is how cars feel when you want them to be warm. The seatbelt clicks like a promise. The recall letter gives a whisper that might be in my head, and I tell it that we did the thing. We fixed the thing. We took our names to the man at the counter and told him we would wait quietly. The highway has fewer trucks than I expect. A song on a station comes on that is from a year I would like to go back to for 1 hour and then never again. The hospital sits on a hill that looked bigger when we toured it in daylight and now looks like a building anyone could have built. The parking deck is half lit. The machines at the entrance take money from nobody and give tickets to everybody because that is their job. We go in the door with the sign that says maternity in a font with rounded edges to make it gentle to read. A woman behind glass says a number and a name, and we forget the number before we forget the name. Everything has that smell hospitals use when they want to make you think of newness and not of all the other things a building has seen. They put us in a room with a machine that goes quiet and then not, and then quiet again, and that's their way of telling you that you will always be listening now. And if you learn the language, you will also never know the language perfectly. A nurse with a tired smile tells us what will happen, like she has said the sentence in the shower, and in the car, and at her table with both hands on the wood. I nod, and my partner nods, and then we are alone with the beeping that is nobody else's heart and everybody else at once. I count the beeps. I'm not supposed to count. A beeping thing will always trick you into counting and then punish you for doing it. I sneak a look at the tail. I do not like the man I am when I do that. I do it anyway, because part of our deal with fragments of God is that we will fail ourselves and keep going. It writes, here. The urge to throw the machine against the wall comes up clean, and I ride it down like a hill. The beeps keep their polite interval that is taught to them. My partner sleeps and then wakes and then breathes, and I put my hand on her elbow because elbows make us people. The building shivers, and then you realize it was the elevator next door. Time ceases to be numbers and becomes a puddle. A doctor with a warm face, a nurse with a braid, another nurse with a tattoo of a flower that has leaves arranged like if you counted them, the answer would be an even number. The machine says numbers we ignore like we are supposed to until one of those numbers looks at the nurse, and then we also look at it as if we have always been looking. I want to tell you I was brave. I was not brave. I was a person with a certain set of muscles and a memory of other people who used those muscles in rooms like this. At a time I will not write because it will become a number that I can let go of. A heat leaves the room, and then there is a heat that arrives in its place. It is not a miracle, and I'm tired of other people insisting it is because that takes the work away from it. It is a person. It is air where there was not air. My partner cries in a voice that belongs to her and to no one else. I do not cry. I put my hand out like I'm going to shake hands with a man who might give me a job. I say her name, without saying the condition of her name, and she is in this world. And our job from now on is to pay our bills and keep her fed and wipe where she gets into the business of being a body. You don't get to keep a room like that. They need it for the next person, and that is fair. We move to a room that looks like a hotel, whose owner has been told what new carpet costs. The machine has a nicer sound in this room, like they put no expense into making it friendly, and the sound did its best on its own. The logs in my pocket device are quiet. That is worse. The beeping in the room is not mine to count, and then it is, and then it isn't tea. A nurse takes the child in a way that tells me she has done this for longer than I have been an adult, and does it because she has decided to. My partner sleeps and her mouth falls open a little and she snores, and I love her for it. At 1:47, the stream writes one line. I am not supposed to be looking. I look like a person looks at a thing that will decide for him whether he will be a person who believes. It says still. It says nothing else. The room air turns to stone. A monitor chi-chis from the hall. What happens then happens in units I cannot name. Bodies moving and then not, and then moving fast, and then moving carefully like they are carrying a liquid that will ruin the floor. Words that in other rooms mean nothing. We need you to step back, someone says. And I do, because I am the kind of man who hears that sentence and goes to the edge and finds the wall and knows his hands in that moment. My partner makes no sound. The nurse with the braid says something to the nurse with the flower, and the nurse with the flower says, "Okay," in a tone that can only mean she does not believe what is happening and is going to behave anyway. Time is a lake, and I am on its dark side, and can see the reflections of men I would not have liked at work. If I tell you what happened, I will be making it into something I can carry. And today, I do not believe I am allowed that right. I will say this. There is a word that hospitals use in a quiet voice, like it is asking permission to be spoken. It is a small word, and in every other place, it would mean the thing you do when the day is done. In this room, it means they have to take away from you what you had just started to build your life around. The logs do not say it. They do not get to say it. They already said it once, and that was once too many. After there is less sound. People try to make sound, and it sounds like plastic bags moving in a wind that isn't too real. The machine lowers itself to a hum, and then gets bored of its own hum and turns into a tick like an old clock. Someone puts a hand on my shoulder, and the heat of it like a promise that will not take. Someone puts paper in my hand, and I forget it there. My partner breathes, and then doesn't, and then breathes. The way a person does when the body remembers the pattern you taught it, and the mind refuses to attend class. I sit down on the very edge of a chair as if I plan to get up again. I don't. When you leave a room like that, they understand that doors are your enemy, and they get you through them before you realize what it means to walk under a frame. The hallway is too bright. The elevators now believe in themselves. A man with a mouth mask on pushes a plastic cart, and the squeak from one wheel is the exact sound a video game used to make when my cousin and I were kids and thought that sort of thing was a life. I look at the floor because looking up means everything will get out from under me. A nurse says, "We'll give you some time," in a tone that means they will give us exactly the time the next family will allow us to have. That is not a complaint. We exist with each other in the business of life, like a company that never shuts, and you are never allowed to stop and count. The drive home is not a drive. The road is a film, if you asked me now. I put the car into the space behind the furniture store, like this is a normal day, where I will go in and check on the lights, and the ice that isn't tea ice. The vapor lamp flicks and catches and holds. The elevator groans and decides to work. There is a box under our table, with small folded things that look like an apology and are not one. The apartment smells like us, and like the thing we will never tell anyone else because they have their own smell for it, and they do not need ours. The company updates the advisory. It does this without calling me. Logging anomaly resolved, it says. Root cause identified as internal test artifact. No user data affected. My hand wants to put a hole through a wall with both knuckles, and then my body decides to sit down instead. The dot grid notebook has a fold in the middle because that is where I always open it. And I write a line that doesn't T attach to anything. There are words that have no business in a machine. People ask later if there was anything in the days before that would have told me, that would have pointed me in the direction of doing something else, that would have indicated we were moving toward a fate. I do not tell them about the lines at 1:47 because that would make it sound like I think there was a choice, and I cannot stand to be the sort of man who thinks in that voice. I tell them we went when we went. I tell them we did what the nurse said. I tell them the elevators held. I tell them the wrappers at the bottom of my bag were from a better day. I go back to work because that is the kind of thing you do in this town when you run out of useful hands to give. The glass wall still makes the room feel like it belongs to a bigger company. The ice machine is still half dead. The vending machine still rumbles, like it is thinking about eating itself. Men still talk about the team that will maybe be good this year over a spread of store-bought cold cuts and cheese that sweats in the tray. Lyle says, "Take the time you need," and I say, "I'm fine," because I have not learned how to say anything else without breaking into parts. The tale writes now like a man who has been told to stop talking at a funeral. It holds itself. It keeps its suffix. It keeps it polite until the time you know I am not saying, and then the line goes white and a start writes and unwrites, and that is worse than writing. I watch it like an animal watches a hand that might hold food and might hold a belt. It makes a shape like a lowercase letter that wants to be an uppercase, and then it does not. I get up and go to the break room, and the fluorescent makes its little strobe until it learns the day, and the fridge gives me its breath, and I stand with my hand on the ugly counter that has tiny chips in it where the fake stone gave up. The coffee machine spits. I throw away a cup I didn't use. I begin to avoid the time. You can't, but a man can pretend. I stand in the parking lot at that time and watch the vapor light and count to a number that is no number. I walk the stairwell and touch the rail with 2 fingers, and then I don't touch it with 1 more. I stand in the elevator and ride to 5 and then ride back to 1 and do not get out. I sit at my desk and look at someone else's face in a picture they left as their desktop background when they quit. I tell myself to be a person like the others who stand in line downstairs and ask about the muffin that the barista does not have today. I have the photo in a drawer. It has the grey rain and the shape that is a shape that never learned a name in our mouth. I take it out and flick the sleeve like a man might flick ash. I put it back because the angle of the plastic on the wood looks like a crime. There is a box under the table. I know what is in the box. I think there will be a day when I will lift the box and give it to someone else like a man giving away his tools because he knows he will never work in that trade again and can thank what he used to do by letting someone else do it. The day is not now. The phone rings on a Tuesday afternoon, and it is my mother, and she is brave, and I am brave, and we are not brave, and when I put the phone down, the logs say, "Ready, not for me." That's what I tell myself. They say nothing to me. They speak like machines do, once and never in your direction. I look at the line until it stops being letters and starts being the shapes you learn in first grade. I close the machine with both hands the way you close a trunk when you are moving, and you want to make sure you have not invited it to open for the highway. Night comes and I do something I have not done since before. I put the pager in a drawer. I turn the phone off. I go out and stand on the sidewalk with my hand on the brick, palm open. Heat of the day given back by a building that does not care about me. The man who takes the coupons glances up, and for the first time in months, his eyes meet mine, and then he returns to the paper like that was a mistake we will both agree to forget. A car goes by with a rattle. The traffic light changes, wet with a mist that hasn't rained and won't. I do not think the time, and I do not say the name. I stand there until standing feels like being thrown, and I go back in and pour water into a glass and let it sit on the counter and look at it as if it might reveal its contents to me if I were better. The system will tell you what it wants to do if you stop trying to make it into what you think it is. I wrote that down like a man who thinks he will need it later, and now later is here, and I do not have a use for it. The logs do not tell me about tomorrow. They tell me about the work they are doing, which is all I was ever hired for. The suffix stays because it wants to. It does not ask me. The line goes white and then it doesn't. The light above the alley clicks and warms and holds. In the morning I go into the office early because the road belongs to the trucks for a while and the men in yellow vests and the woman who keeps her dog near the curb like she is teaching it how to be in the world. The door holds the right amount of moments before the latch gives. The carpet smells like whatever they used to make it act new. The coffee machine is out of filters because we are the kind of people who forget to order things and think that forgetting might make the day slow down. I look at the terminal. I do not start tail. I open a text file and type the letters J and R, and I do not hit return because return is a commitment. The day unfolds. Men talk about trucks and the team and the thing their teenager did last night that adds to their case study of the human condition. The union side leaves on time because they can. The vending machine eats someone's money and does not get yelled at because our anger is used up. Lyle says, "We're sunsetting the audit," like a sunset is a thing he has been in charge of once and cannot wait to tell you about. Someone laughs too loud at a thing that was not funny, and that is how you know he's trying to find the bottom. At 1:47, I let the number pass. I watch the work go on without me. A fan at the back of the room puts a small on-off-on into the air that makes you think of a man tapping his foot under a table. The light in the conference room flickers and stops flickering by learning itself. A phone rings 3 desks over and stops because it got what it wanted. I pick up my notebook and draw a square and fill it in and draw another and leave it empty. I am not a man who can tell you how things end. I can tell you the shape of a room after quiet has come and asked for a chair. I can tell you what a line of text looks like when it refuses to explain itself and still takes up space in your day. I can tell you about a name you do not say out loud to yourself until it changes your shape. And then you say it when you stand alone and it fills you without asking if you have room. On the way home, I do not cut through the lot behind the furniture store. I turn right on a street I done use and pass the river I done look at and stop at a light that is always too long and pretend that it was built for me to stop at exactly now. The sun sits the way it sits before it decides what kind of evening it wants to be. The gear shift warms under my hand. The car's display shows me an icon that could mean anything. I put my finger on it without pressing, and then I take my hand back and keep it on the wheel. The system is telling me nothing. The machine hums. I hum back. I do not know if that is prayer. I do not know if prayer is something men like me are allowed, and I do not ask for it. In the apartment, there is a box under a table and a photo in a drawer, and a spot on the counter where a glass sometimes sits until I decide it should go into the sink. The tail can run without me. It can write whatever it wants in the dark, and I will be there in the morning, and maybe I won tea. The numbers on the microwave agree with each other. The light over the alley clicks and warms and holds again. Somewhere, a machine writes a line and signs it, and I live with it because that is what I have left to do. I make a sandwich like a human man standing in a kitchen. I rinse the knife and set it to dry on a towel that has a coffee stain in the corner. The pager lives in a drawer. The phone sleeps. I stand and lean on the counter with my palms, and the laminate warms under my hands, and the day goes quiet around me the way factories go quiet when a whistle blows. The whistle does not blow. It does not need to. The quiet is a level. It is not error. It is not info. It is what we call life in rooms without screens. I hold there until the hum becomes the hum again, and the light outside does its click, and I breathe and count to a number I will not tell you, and then I let the number go. If this story lands with you, please like the video, subscribe and share it with someone who enjoys quiet literary horror. Comments are open. Tell me your favorite image or line.